everyone, welcome to another Classic Movie Monday, and today, as you can see by the title, I'm going to be briefly discussing Jaws. I think a lot of people put this film in the classic category because it was fairly groundbreaking in regards to effects during the time. It was also a big sort of action set piece dealing with monsters in particular, big forces of nature, in particular sharks, which I think is something that has both fascinated people as well as given them fears of ever swimming in the ocean again. But regardless, this film, I think, is much more than what I think it as a classic claims to be. Yes, it was groundbreaking with effects, even though maybe nowadays we find the effects maybe a little bit hokey. The way we see sharks is probably not the same way that sharks were seen in the 70s, especially considering the fact we have films that are about sharks that sort of came after Jaws, and kind of tried to sort of rip off the concept and kind of make their own versions of sharks, basically, and, hence asylum films like Sharknado, for example. But the interesting thing about Jaws is that not only was it really the first big shark attack film, but it was probably the best out of all of the other shark attack films, and most widely known and recognized. And I think the reason is actually for reasons that usually people don't cite this film as being a classic, like I mentioned. First being that we do have some likable characters in this movie to sort of carry the story and the plot through. Both of these all three of the main characters are fairly unique, and they sort of offer something different to the table when it comes to what their mission is, which is ultimately to kill the shark. And I think that's what makes it stand out as a film. Also, the fact that it doesn't try to go overboard with what it is. I think that Jaws provides a good simplistic, straightforward story, as opposed to trying to complicate things or make things a little bit more crazy. It seems to be fairly grounded in as far as the story is concerned, because it's not as elaborate, and it kind of just knows what it is. It's a shark film. It's about sort of good versus evil, people going out and destroying the shark, the enemy. So it's really not designed to be this very complex film. But I think regardless, despite its simplistic aspects, it still offers, I think, the audience really something special. And I think that specialness comes out of the fact that it focuses on trying to embrace what it is and goes with the story and tries to create cohesiveness and knows that it doesn't need to overcomplicate things, and it can be a straightforward film. And I think that's really what Jaws offers. It's really clear from beginning to end what's going on, who's involved, and you do sort of see a little bit of character development too, even out of the simplistic aspects of the film. But basically, to sum up in a nutshell exactly what Jaws is about, in case you have not seen the film, Martin Brody is a police chief who's played by Roy Schneider. And basically, he's really the one that I think is given the most focus, because we see him throughout the majority of the film, because it starts off with his character. So you sort of see how he has this sort of dilemma in the beginning with being paranoid in regards to something bad happening to the town, and you kind of see too that he feels that it's sort of his obligation as the police chief to make sure everything is in order, and that there is no disturbances, basically. And you sort of see that complicate things in the way beginning, especially considering the fact that some people end up getting killed as a result of this shark invasion, basically, because the shark is really not designed to be there, but it's there anyway. And you sort of see that impact as you go. You see that impact on him as you go through the film. Matt Hooper, who plays Matt Hooper, the oceanographer, who is played by Richard Dreyfuss, he does a very good job of being the very intellectual one and understanding sharks and how they function, and his character is, I think, mainly designed to move the plot forward, but at the same time he still has a character to himself. I guess I wouldn't say he doesn't really have an arc. He doesn't have like a sort of a real backstory. All he has is sort of his personality, which has always appealed to the ocean and always has had that passion for the ocean and its many creatures, and one being including sharks. But regardless, he's still a likable character, despite the fact that he doesn't really go through any change throughout the story. And then lastly, we have the shark hunter Quint, played by Robert Shaw. This is by far my favorite character in the movie. He just has this interesting way of approaching things, especially when you see him sort of in the beginning. You could really tell that he's sort of lived his life on the ocean. He is that kind of character, and he's got that Irish accent, and he's just out there hamming it to the camera, and it's so much fun watching him, because you really do see the character that comes out of him, and it's really, it feels like watching a captain who's known the sea life and known what it's like to live really on the ocean, and he really provides that aspect for the team, which is basically these three characters, Martin, Matt, and Quint. Basically, they are the ones who are ultimately given the task to kill the shark. And you'll sort of see how this comes about if you choose to watch the film. But that's really the film in a nutshell. You will see how some of the town sort of politics kind of comes into play a little bit, more having to do so with money than anything else, and you'll see how this impacts the film a little bit. But it's really not the main focus. It's almost treated as like a side issue. It's not really fully resolved. But the main goal is really the focus and sort of the heart of the film, because you sort of see the catastrophe building with this shark, and then you finally see the transitioning of, okay, we have this problem, to, okay, let's go out and destroy the problem. So that's really the major plot shift that happens if you choose to watch this film. But basically, in a nutshell, that's really what Jaws is and what it has to offer. I think not only are the characters fairly likable and engaging, I think the whole story itself, even though it's, again, fairly simplistic, it it still is engaging to the point where you want to know what ultimately happens. What do they do to ultimately defeat the shark? What are the who lives, who dies? You know, you kind of want to know these things, especially if you haven't seen the film before. But I think it's still a film that you can come back to and sort of enjoy, and maybe you didn't remember a couple of things as to what ended up resulting, and I think it does sort of bring a little bit of terror, but I wouldn't say it's fairly gory compared to other kinds of, you know, monster infestation kinds of movies. This one is relatively tame. I mean, there is one point that did make me jump a bit, but I wouldn't say it's like a horror film at all. But there are certain scenes that are maybe a little bit graphic. So if you are creeped out by blood, Jaws has got a lot of that, so that might be an issue. But overall, it's still a very interesting film because it approaches this in the most simplistic way possible, but yet I think it does it in a very effective way, because again, we have characters, we have a consistent story, there's heroes to root for, there's a villain to an obstacle to be up against. It has all of the elements of a good film because it executes those elements so well. Despite the fact that it might be a little simplistic for some, I think it still holds up as being a very enjoyable film. And I have yet to hear the person who says that they didn't like Jaws. But again, I mean, I think it all just depends on what you enjoy about film. And I really do enjoy Spielberg's adventure sort of oriented films, and I felt like they really treated this too as an adventure film, and that, you know, it's not just about revenge. It's about going out there and accomplishing something, and really at the end of the day, that's what the film does. It sets these men out there to go accomplish something and, you know, defeat a foe that has been a problem and solve a problem, basically, which is the shark. But I think that's all I can really say about the film without spoiling anything or really giving anything so much away. But I think that's really all that I can really say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. There was a lot of technical aspects that went into this film, and I think that's also something worthy to note if you sort of appreciate the technicalities of how things look in a film. I think you can appreciate what Jaws has to offer. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them again. But I think that's really all I can say. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have all a great day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.